the other thing that I wanted to mention here, and a big reason why you're on the show today, this is Michael Zumpano. I know people are tuning in; they'll see the title, but also Michael is local, so we've connected through my brother and through our good friend Tom File, and we've been trying to set this up for quite some time. But
over a year,
I consider you a pioneer and somebody that has kind of, I always kind of say the first man through the wall gets bloody. The first guy that's got to kind of lead the charge gets fucked up pretty bad along the way, and ends up making mistakes and running into errors and stuff, but error correcting quickly. But handling all that, and then everyone else can kind of come behind later on. I mean, you are somebody that was bringing like protein powder to the market, and I think even you were mentioning that the distribution of that protein powder was even like illegal at that time.
Sure.
What year was that? Like when did something that go?
1976. Yeah.
And why was protein illegal?
Well, it just hadn't been used in this way. It wasn't illegal, but I mean, supplements were not federally legal. There was nothing that made supplements legal. It was the Food and Drug Administration, not the Food, Drug, and Supplement Administration. So I would have, I got called into an FDA office at one point. This was 1983. And a federal agent was screaming at me from across the table, pounding his fist and telling me I'm going to jail. He said, "You are either selling an illegal drug, or an adulterated food. Take your pick. Either way, you're going to jail."
Wow.
So,
Was there a reason, like why? Because it's protein. I mean, why was it so?
Because there was no statute, there was no act, there was no bill, there was no law. And so we realized that we needed that. And to your point of saying, well, I was involved in nutrition, that was kind of like cannabis light, and then got involved in cannabis. The first mouse isn't the one that gets the cheese. The first mouse gets the trap across the neck, right? But I like edgy businesses, and I like to do it with integrity, and I like to do it with a little bit of, I try to do it with wisdom, and but yeah, it's those first guys in, they take a beating. And if they do it right, they can kind of break through, as we have, but boy, it takes staying power, because if you think it's going to take 2 years, it's going to take 12.
What led you to get into supplements? What made you think that they were effective? Was it some experience in bodybuilding, or where did it come from?
No, I was a triple major in college. Math, physics, chemistry. So all hard courses. And I was taking a lot of units, and it didn't happen every quarter, but toward the end of each quarter during dead week, I'd literally faint. I'd collapse. I went into the hospital in 76. I'm almost 6'3", or I was at the time. I weighed 121 pounds. Yeah. So the doctor started giving me steroids. He said, if they're for anybody, they're for you, buddy. And he said, you might think about working out. I literally looked like a POW. I mean, I saw, at the time we had POWs coming back from Vietnam. I saw a guy in the paper, and I commented to my friend. I said something like, yeah, if I looked like that, I wouldn't be wearing short sleeve shirts. And he said to me, dude, are you kidding? You look worse than that.
Yeah.
And, I looked at myself in the mirror, and I mean, it was a reality check. So I got serious about it. I dropped out of school for a quarter, and I went from 120 pounds to 180 pounds in 3 months.
Dropped out of school specifically to train?
Yeah, I did. When I do something, I don't do it halfway. No, I jump in with both feet. And I gained 60 pounds in 3 months, and I started researching products. I didn't like eating food, especially not cafeteria food at a vegetarian college.
They were vegetarian?
A vegetarian college. I'll tell you, ask me about that later. Yeah. And so I started thinking about, okay, macronutrients. You have carbohydrate, fat, and protein. So what would be the best carbohydrate that I could drink? Well, there wasn't anything. You had sugar. You could put sugar in water, or, fruit sugar, or lactose, or something like that. But there was nothing really that wasn't going to just blow your blood sugar, through the roof. So I started looking at complex carbohydrates, and I saw some study that showed the solubility of complex carbohydrates improved dramatically if you just broke it down a little bit. So the length of that complex carbohydrate, if you could just break it down a little, it would dissolve in water without making it thick. So I started making it at the school lab, and once a week I'd go in and I'd break it down with enzymes, and then when it would start to clear up, I'd kill off the enzymes with heat, and then I put
no idea why you're doing this other than just for your own, just to get
because
bigger.
I wanted to double my body weight.
I wanted
to be 240, and which I did, pretty quick. But so that was the carbohydrate portion, and then I started studying fats, and I came on to medium chain triglycerides. This was all 1976, right? I found out about medium chain triglyceride oil and what they did with it with children and neonatal kids that were, having trouble. Anyway, I started using MCTs. Fantastic. I mean, and I also started studying proteins. I found there was a beef protein that I didn't use in my products until '89. Yeah. But I found a beef protein that was literally, when they cut beef off the bone in a slaughterhouse, there's still a lot of beef left on the bone, and they take that off with rotating wire brushes, I guess, and then they cook it up and they make a stock out of it, and they sell that as like a soup stock,
like a bone broth type thing.
Yeah. And so I would buy that, and what I liked about it was it was very easy on the intestines. So if you had piglets. If you were a farmer, you don't look like a farmer, but if you were, if you had piglets, you want to wean them quickly, because the quicker you can wean them, the more insecure they are and the more they'll eat and the fatter they'll get and the more money you'll make. So you want to traumatize these poor little piglets as early as freaking possible in their life. But the trouble is, if you wean them too early, they can't take anything but mom's milk. And they'll slough their intestines and die. But if you give them this beef protein, they won't, and they'll survive. So that was one of the major uses. And I thought, well, it's good for baby pigs. And so I would blend.
Pigs are actually pretty similar to humans, right?
They are.
In some ways, yeah.
In
digestion and
things
like
in a
that.
lot of ways, drug responses too, in some cases. Yeah. So, so then I started working with proteins, and same thing. If you take a protein and you break it down, not all the way to a free amino, because that tastes terrible, but if you break it down to like small peptides, oligopeptides, it actually improves absorption. They actually can be absorbed faster than, everybody knows this. This is 40-year-old information, actually older information, right. More than 40 years old. But yeah, they're absorbed faster than free amino acids in some cases. So some amino acids like tyrosine, tryptophan, they're still in the blood, in the gut several hours later. They're not all in your blood. But if you take them as a tripeptide, or as it's
almost like an IV,
a short peptide, they get drawn in much quicker. So I added those to the product, and I looked at, I wanted to see what the amino acid profile was that a athlete would use. So I was reading a lot of information. There wasn't a lot out there in the 1970s, but there was some. And so I started creating formulas where I'd blend different proteins to get a certain amino acid profile, and then I try to blend them to get a certain time course of digestion. So like whey is digested very quickly, but it drops you. Right?
How were you testing this at the time, by the way?
I wasn't testing.
Okay.
I was just putting stuff together.
Yeah.
And eating it. Yeah.
Okay.
There was no, at the time, in the 70s, I wasn't doing any university studies or anything like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so, I'd blend the smaller proteins like whey, larger proteins like casein, and then the largest proteins like egg, right? So I had a pretty cool formula that ultimately in 1986 became metabolol. And I don't know if you guys remember metabolol back in the day. You're not that old, but metabolol was a big product, in the in the late 80s.
Yeah, that's a blended protein that's slow and fast, right? I mean,
yeah.
And
it had carbohydrate. And at the time, I went away from the straight chain carbs to a branching carbohydrate, which is what everybody takes now.
So yours was maybe like almost like a full kind of meal replacement almost?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Everything except fiber. I didn't put any fiber in metabolol, but it had, even back in the day, originally it had EPA and DHA in it back in the mid 80s. And we actually had to stop putting it in because we couldn't get it anymore. We were getting it very refined, so it didn't have a fishy taste to it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And the guy at a certain point said, well, I can't make enough of that, and I have to sell it for, higher volume product, better products like capsules and things like that. So